Come on in. Come on in. There's nothing to fear. It's only the creeps of fire. Measured by our planet to the darkness in space. Scientists use our solar system, vast regions of the universe, as a giant timekeeper. Time has a distance as hazy as the perimeter of our own galaxy, and as hazy as the plot of a movie. The haze occasionally clears those who inquire into the fabric of the story and say, why am I watching this nonsense? It's a glimpse of the true meaning of time, from creation to the present. The unborn yesterdays that lead to today and stretch out toward eternity. Someday, man will strike a balance between those two universal forces, the past and the future. Man will make a fantastic journey to the center of time. Unfortunately, nothing like that will happen in this movie. As a matter of fact, nothing really happens in this movie, and it will contribute nothing to your knowledge of science, the universe, or your place in the cosmos. So if you value your time, please, go to bed, because after a brief respite, it's precisely what I intend to do myself. Now, if you'll just concentrate calmly, coolly, admit that you're being very, very foolish. When I hear the last click of that dial, which tells me everybody has gone to bed, then I, too, will be able to properly relax, not have to continue with this absurdity. But I still see a couple of you holdouts there, and one in Nutley, New Jersey, very persistent. Also, a couple of holdouts in nearby Riverdale. You would think that they would know better in that area, so close to Bronxville, which is always sleeping. Come on. A few more of you out there. You know who you are. You're really all spaced out anyway. You don't need to...
Nightcap. Conversations on the arts and letters. With hosts, Studs Terkel and Calvin Trillin. Tonight's guests are Stephen King, perhaps America's best-known writer of horror fiction, author of such classics as Carrie, The Shining, Dance Macabre, and Creepshow, in the movie version of which he makes his acting debut as well. Tom Savini, an acclaimed actor in theater and film, is also a special effects giant, responsible for the technically superb makeup in Friday the 13th, Dawn of the Dead, and Creepshow. George Romero, director of Dawn of the Dead and Creepshow, whose early film Night of the Living Dead has become a cult classic, paving the way for many of the horror movies of the last 2 decades.
He's slowly going crazy. And she kills the landlord.
From Dracula to Frankenstein to Hitchcock's The Psycho to The Night of the Living Dead and The Shining, the subject of horror has always fascinated the public. How come? We were 3 masters of modern horror. Perhaps we can find out why.
Just to give us some idea of the horrifying things we're up against, we're going to show a clip of a film that all 3 of our guests collaborated on.
Well, this is going to be an entirely new experience.
You guys think that's scary, huh? Actually, I could tell it wasn't really scary because Studs and really scary things crawls under that chair right there. Is the horror, the scariness of horror, partly in the timing? I mean, is it partly when these things happen, as opposed to this clip where a lot of them happen one right after another?
Well, I think so, in the context of, as a film on reels, or I think that the pacing and the timing is different between a film and a book, but I think that pacing and timing are very important elements, and you have to sort of time your shots.
Oh, it's situational. It's like, it's an involuntary, a laugh and a scream, they're both like involuntary reflexes. They're involuntary reactions to them.
You just must have called the shot. You must know what I was thinking. Telepathy, so here again. The matter of laugh, you mentioned the laugh. I want to laugh. Now, is that wrong?
No.
Would you consider that an affront to your work, that I want to laugh when I see it?
No, it's sick, but it's not wrong. But then we're sick to do it. There was a story in a newspaper about 3 years ago that I still haven't completely lived down. I was at a World Fantasy Convention, and it was the buffet lunch, and it was pressed chicken or something that had obviously been flown in from the depths of some strange place. And some guy came up to me with a hangover from the AP and said, "What do you think about your fans?" And I said, "They're just like me, they're warped." And so it came out in the paper. King says his fans are warped, but you got to have a few warps in your record to dig it at all. I mean, we talked about the effects and stuff, and we, you know,
Laugh.
look at Savini right now.
I get called. I'm demented, I'm sick,
Well, it's funny, though, but when we start talking about something, Tom will come in and he'll be describing what he can make his monster do, and he'll say, and then the monster is going to do. Soon we're rolling on the floor laughing.
Yeah, but it's not because it's gory. It's because it's a magic trick that works. You know, like if I see something that's gory and I say, "Ah, beautiful," it's because technically, you know, it.
When it's like a
fool people.
doctor, when a doctor has a horrendous case, it's very interesting. You know, oh, beautiful. Yet the person is suffering in a way not too unrelated.
Reporters do that. They say that was a really good murder.
Yeah,
I mean,
situation.
Juicy murder or something.
Yeah.
Do you remember Fibber McGee's closet? Man, you knew he was going to open that door, and all that stuff was going to fall out. The knowing beforehand was what created the laugh, like in the crate, you know, when you know, by the time, you wouldn't think that anybody would care about the janitor, for instance, whether or not he was going to go under the stairs. We know that there's something in that box, and we know the box is under the stairs, but that makes it worse. It's just, I still don't know the difference in effect, why we laugh at one and scream at the other, but I know they're related because in a movie theater, people scream, and after the scream, then they...
Well, no, yeah, are you laughing because it's funny, or you laugh... Sometimes it's a laugh, it's a release. Yeah. You're so scared, all you can do is laugh. It's hysterical, like The Mummy. When The Mummy first appeared in the movie, the guy's reaction is to laugh hysterically,
that's right.
you know?
Forgot about that.
Or you
That
laugh.
was a scary scene.
Or you laugh at yourself. I mean, because half the time you sit in your chair and you're challenging the author or the filmmaker or whatever to scare you. And when it works, it makes you laugh. That's, you know, but it's like going to an amusement park or into a laugh in the dark or something.
Is it more graphic today, more literal today than it was days before? More.
Yeah.
I think it is. But I think in the late 60s, early 70s, and it's very hard to define whether it was just artists sort of, you know, bursting and trying to get more freedom, or whether it was just the liberalization of the various codes that control all the media. But there, in the late 60s, early 70s, we really started to explode with more explicit sex, more explicit language, more explicit violence, and everything else.
It all came into our houses anyway on TV. You know, we were watching guys blown away in Vietnam, and Savini didn't do any of those, what do you call it, blowing ahead in the movies.
Splatter effect?
Splatter effects, but you say that you blow a head or something like that. We had several heads that we blew.
That's a real good point. Remember, I think it was ABC was constantly showing a Nicaraguan soldier blowing away that photographer. You remember that?
Right.
They show that, and that stuck in my mind longer than anything I'd ever seen in any horror movie. That was because it was real and it was...
Well, except they didn't show. I mean,
Gets you in a place.
people now remember the war as having been shown on television, but they didn't actually show heads blowing up. I mean,
yes, they did. There was the picture of the general.
Oh, except that one general. Well, you didn't see that. You only saw him like that. You didn't see his head blow up.
Photographs in Newsweek.
That's Eddie Adams' famous celebrated photograph. Saigon police chief shooting the suspected VC.
Yeah, there were some of those, sure. But part of the effect is that people actually know something in a horror movie. People actually know something horrible is going to happen. They know when the guy opens the closet.
It's why you're there. And it's safe. I mean, you know that you're going to be, or you hope that you're going to be afraid. Fans hope that they're going to be frightened. And that's partly why they go. It's why they ride a roller coaster or ride a laugh in the dark where things jump out of the corners at you. Yeah. And that's why they're there. And it's also very safe. You know, I mean, we have the living room war, and we have other things that frighten us, the bomb and all this. You know, we're just walking down the street in some cities. We're partly trying to escape that.
It's interesting to me that I know that George is right when he said that the technology followed the impulse to get more graphic, and the impulse to get more graphic came during the Vietnam War, and it didn't have anything to do with horror movies. They were American historical pageants that created, in a way, that created the rating system to begin with, that made the movie industry say, wait a minute, if you're going to show these effects, we've got to stagger things. Bonnie and Clyde was a Depression epic, graphic bloodshed, but the real first graphic bloodshed that we saw as Americans in our movie theaters was from Sam Peckinpah, and they were in Westerns. The Wild Bunch was actually, I would say that and Bonnie and Clyde were more responsible for the rating system than, say, a picture like Dawn of the Dead. Not Dawn, Night of the Living Dead, which was released unrated.
Right. Because those were the first movies where instead of just a guy getting shot, we were all brought to think if a guy got shot, there was apparently a neat little hole, and it stayed in the body, right?
They went home. And they'd fall down. So it wasn't neat, it was clean, murder was that. It's not ugly, you know.
So death was not really death.
Yeah.
Do you...
it's not really death, I think, even when you show it graphically. In the context of a fantasy, I do think that people separate fantasy from... I think that the only sort of behavior-making stuff is not the fantasy stuff. It's more the one-on-one human violence. And
so this is, in a way, you're answering those who say, look at the gratuitous violence, the effect it has on young people. You're saying... people have the capacity to separate the fantasy from the real.
I think even children do. I remember fairy tales and things like that were really violent, but I got past it because I didn't expect a wolf to dress up like my grandmother, you know.
You're watching Sleepcore. Pleasant dreams.
Comics Interview, the magazine where both the fans and the pros turn to see who's who and how it's done. Recent interviews include talks with DS9 cast members and the creative team behind the Superman series. Science fiction, mysteries, and more. A bookstore featuring the latest in genre releases, plus a large selection of used books. They're located at 140 Chambers Street.
My name is Andrea Lipinski. There is a dark mist hanging over the studio. A mist that rises up from the Hudson River and drifts slowly to the east. In the studio, there is a woman who does not yet realize that her life is in grave danger, and that the man who is sitting next to her at this moment is far more deadly than she could ever have imagined. Dark Shadows is known by most people as the 1960s soap opera, which became more and more supernatural as the years went on. It also led to several feature films and a short-lived remake in 1991. Dark Shadows began its rise in popularity with the character of Barnabas and proceeded to develop a tremendous following composed primarily of young people. With Keith and me to discuss Dark Shadows in its various forms are, on my far right, Terry Helbing, theater critic, playwright, director, actor, and publisher, who has written about Dark Shadows fandom for The Native. Next, on my right, someone familiar to Rift viewers, David Nahmod, an occasional film critic for the Chronic Rift and a Dark Shadows historian who is currently in the process of making a documentary about fandom. Lastly, on the other side of Keith, we have Ron Sproat, a writer for Dark Shadows from 1966 to 1969, who created the Laura the Phoenix character and also had a hand in the invention of Barnabas. Gentlemen, how do you explain the lasting popularity of the original 1960s series, even over a modern version that had real production values?
I think that the remake was more popular than people realized. The actual ratings for the two series were pretty concurrent. They both had the same rating, but what's considered successful in the daytime and at nighttime is just two different things, but they basically had the same rating and the same sized audience. And
but the second one didn't last as long.
No, it didn't last as long because an 8.5 rating is considered a disaster by night, but it's considered a tremendous hit by day.
Okay.
And but the audience pretty much stayed about the same. And the original series is still popular because it's campy, charming, and fun.
In that order.
Anybody else have any reasons that they think for the popularity of the original series?
Well, it seemed to me, as I was saying earlier, that it looked like it was being done on like a nickel, and you know, you'd see the stagehands close the doors, or you know, you could see the actors looking at their teleprompter, and it just. The other thing is, it was different. And, you know, here was an aging film diva coming to...
Joan Bennett.
Right.
Well, that's pretty aging at that point. But, you know, there weren't that many other old film stars coming to TV. There was, we said McDonald Carey and somebody else, Dan Andrews. So it was a novelty to begin with. And it was campy, and it was silly, and it wasn't just, you know, oh, my goodness, go to the hospital, he had a heart attack. You know, it was... different stuff.
It was, oh my goodness, he's come back from the dead.
It was getting kind of thin until they dragged out Barnabas. You know, it was Victoria Winters, Klaus von Bülow, you know, comes in there. Excuse me, but it was, you know, this gothic. And it was getting kind of, you know, snorry, but, you know, then they trotted out the supernatural, and it was like, boom, you know?
And when Barnabas came on, that was popular, so they brought in a few ghosts, a werewolf. They went to the 19th century, the 18th century, and always you had these cheap flyaway sets, and always nobody could remember their lines, but also, which was always very entertaining, as we saw in the blooper reel before, but what a lot of people don't remember is that for all those technical problems, the stories, the scripts were really well.
And here we have.
Were really well written.
So wonderful.
The plots were very complex and very well thought out and extremely well written, and they were different. I mean, there was nothing like this on daytime TV.
Well, he would be saying this even if you weren't here.
No, it's true, because I said it the other night when we were talking.
But the thing is, it did still
but you
have
gave him
that.
a check about that,
Don't tell them. Anyway, the thing is, it did retain some of those elements, though. In many ways, it was still your classic soap opera. I mean, the complicated plots is a staple of soap operas. It had the melodrama, it had the dramatic music.
But it had fewer characters. It had...
Yes.
You know, well, I would call it a repertory company. You know, that a lot of, like, Marie Wallace and whoever, they played... When they'd skip around time, it was like a repertory.
They would play their own ancestors and descendants.
And there were a lot of theatrical elements, not just the flubs.
Right.
But I would love to hear how the show evolved. It began as this Jane Eyre type of thing and turned into this horror show. I'd love to hear how it evolved from someone who was there.
What was the genesis of this movie?
No, I don't know. What do you think?
I'd love to hear about it.
Oh, well,
Tell us.
the evolution of Dark Shadows was it did start off as sort of Jane Eyre, and we added a ghost rather timidly, and that. Then one day we decided the character was dead. We had a sort of boring story about a child custody suit. We decided the mother was dead. Her name was Laura. She'd come back together.
And she really was dead.
Yes, she really was dead.
We made clips from similar soap opera type stories.
That seemed to work, and so we got through that rather quickly, and had to come up with something. And Dan Curtis, who produced the thing, said, "Let's go for broke. Let's do a vampire." And we figured he would either be laughed off the air or people would be startled into watching it, and people were startled into watching it. But one thing about the show, normal soap operas went for a big event to happen every Friday. That was the standard format for soap opera at that time. Yeah, you would go, the week would go along sort of aiming toward the big thing that would happen on Friday. What was set out for us by the producer on this show was that every day would be Friday. It would have to be, there would have to be, and it got worse as it went along because the fetish for action got to be worse. So there was a cliffhanger at the end of every scene, practically at the end.
I'm curious. I remember when watching the first time Barnabas got turned into a vampire, the word vampire was never mentioned.
Yes.
Was this deliberate? Or,
yes.
Saying, oh, you are a creature of the night. Oh, you can be killed by a stake. You can't stand daylight.
Or you could say, oh, he's undead. But the V word.
Why was the V word never used?
I don't know. I really don't know.
An air of mystery, maybe?
Oh, come on.
We had a thing about it, particularly a writer named Mal Marmerstein who had a fixation about mentioning the word vampire. So we never mentioned it until Mal left, and another writer named Sam Hall came on the show, and he said vampire.
Oh, my goodness.
It was a bit...
Was he related to Grayson?
Yes.
They were married, I think. They were married.
Explains a lot.
When did it, may I throw in a question?
Oh, sure. You're on staff. We'll allow you to throw a question.
From watching the earlier episodes when everything was played very seriously, and then after they got into the first time travel story is when it really started getting just a little bit campy. What was it that made the people who were producing it decide to go from serious horror to kind of charming camp horror?
I don't think that was a conscious decision. I think it crept into it. I mean, I don't know exactly when that happened, but I mean, we did have fun writing the show, I've got to admit, and it was, we would crack each other up over this plot. How could you not? I mean,
one can't help but notice that it was roughly the same time as Lost in Space and Batman, which also had a certain camp.
The 60s,
Yes, but we weren't really aiming for it. And actually, we thought...
Were you even aiming for the same audience, or?
No. We weren't aiming to be campy.
Welcome to my castle in Transylvania. Remember the old line in the horror movies years and years ago? Bela Lugosi as Dracula, Boris Karloff as the Frankenstein monster, the movies that chilled us all as we sat frightened in darkened theaters on Saturday afternoon. Tonight, late night television brings back the good old days and the better new days of monsters and movies as we discuss the four biggest monsters of all time. Dracula, the Frankenstein monster, the Wolfman, and King Kong, and a few other surprises, and I hope you'll stay with us. Parenthetically, before we get into monsters and what made them great and what makes them scary, it was 10 years ago tonight that the great blackout occurred in New York City. New Yorkers, what are you doing differently tonight from what you did 10 years ago? Hope you'll stay tuned for Monsters and Movies as tomorrow continues right after these announcements. Wait a second. And now to the three gentlemen who will tell us about all those bad, bad monsters in movies. First of all, Mr. Leonard Wolf, who is quite probably the only professor in America who offers a college-level course entitled simply Monsters, as well as other classes specifically designed to study the legendary Dracula. Mr. Wolf teaches at San Francisco State University. He has recently authored a book entitled The Annotated Dracula, and possibly not by coincidence alone, was born in Vulcan, Romania, which is commonly known as Transylvania. Mr. Wolf, welcome, sir. Mr. Peter Cushing, who is sitting on a cushion. In New York City over the coming weekend, they are going to have the famous Monsters Convention. The cult following of monster and horror films is growing higher and higher, and one of the most famous stars, and I'm told the king of the current horror film craze, is Peter Cushing, who has starred in over 6 Frankenstein films. He has done such fantastic pictures as The Horror Express, The Creeping Flesh, and Tales from the Crypt. Forrest Ackerman, here is a gentleman who has written for almost every famous magazine that has to do with monsters, including Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, one of the magazines that's sponsoring the Famous Monsters Convention. He has edited several books, including Boris Karloff, The Frankenstein Monster, and he wears a cape tonight, which I am told was worn by Bela Lugosi in the Dracula pictures of some years ago. Huh? Very true. Do you guys ever get scared like we used to in the theaters? I'm going to ask you this first, Mr. Cushing, because you look scary.
Do I look
Yes,
scary?
you do. You look menacing, surely.
Do you mean, do I get scared of what I do?
Mm-hmm. When you
As an
watched
actor, I'm always frightened of anything I do because I never feel I do it well enough. But I don't get frightened of the characters. That would be no good at all.
What about when you sit down and watch a Frankenstein picture that you just completed? Aren't you a little bit frightened?
No. It's usually about 6 months after one's made the picture, you see some sort of cut of the picture, and usually I like to see the final cut because then you really see what the audience are going to see. And after those 6 months, a lot of the raw edges have worn off of feeling that I hadn't done the scenes well enough, or I could be better in such and such. And you can see it impersonal in a way. But I'm not scared because when you've been so close to a script, and you have to really study a script and know what it's all about, that you're beyond being scared. But if it's a picture I haven't been in, then I can be scared indeed, but not my own.
Would you fellas agree that if we were casting a man to be in a shocker picture, that his face is absolutely perfect? Look at those eyes, how they glisten, the high cheekbones.
I'm better when I got my hairpiece on.
He very frequently, plays straight roles.
Thank you,
and
dear
it's very
boy.
important to notice that he's the man who discovers that the quality of the horror is in us. His straight role, he's not the monster, he's not the horror creature. He plays the priest, the knower, the man who teaches us the meaning of it all.
And the Sacred of Hearts.
Yes. Now you're talking about one of my favorite monster is Dracula. I used to sit through those things 3 and 4 times, and when they are on the late night television now after we're off the air, I still watch them. Tell me about Dracula. Was there ever a real Dracula?
Well, recently there's come into prominence the name of Vlad Tepes, who was called Dracula, the son of Dracul, a 15th century petty tyrant of Transylvania, about whom the most significant thing one ought to say is that he was not a vampire. He was a very, very bad fellow. On the other hand, Bram Stoker took his reputation for wickedness and created a figure in Stoker's novel, Dracula, which is the basis for my book, The Annotated Dracula. The character Dracula in that book is the one that I think has captured the imagination, probably of England and America first, and then France and Italy and Germany.
Didn't Christopher Lee do a film playing Vlad, with the...
Yes.
For television.
Yes, it was
the Swedish company did it.
It was finally, yes, it came out about 1970, and he did it in connection with Floresco and McNally, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yes. But it was about the actual man, wasn't it? Yes, upon, I suppose, whom Bram Stoker based his stories.
Yes, he did.
Was he impaled? He was called Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad impaled his victims, some 30 or 40,000 of them, on very
had his meal underneath.
Yes. Yes, cheap gravy.
Were there ever... Notice how I waited for it. I knew it was coming. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Careful around here, you know. We're all comics at heart.
Were there ever vampires, people that would suck the blood from other people?
There certainly were, and if I may say so, there certainly are.
You're kidding.
Yes. In one of my books, there's a transcription of an interview I made with a living vampire. It's not so unusual. You may recall that the last vampire executed for his crimes was in not 1648, but 1948 in London. His name is John Hay. And
frightening, that
very frightening story. It's an illness, like many other psychopathic illnesses, where people imagine that they need human blood to survive, or where, as with the young man I interviewed, there's a psychosexual distress in him that requires that he take human blood to achieve his delight. There's another figure, probably the wickedest man that I know anything at all about, who was the Marshal of France and who rode with Joan of Arc in the years when she was achieving her greatest spiritual power, who then retired after she was executed. He retired to his estate and then spent many, many years of his life committing one abomination after another. I can't really go into the details. They're too dreadful.
Why not?
You must give us the details. Please, I really, could you give us just several abominations?
Well,
you got three sitting here.
I tell you something. It's an abomination that will turn us from comedy to a certain amount of grim consideration of human frailty and monstrosity. He murdered children and murdered them.
That's enough abomination. Yeah, I understand.
I thought you'd stop me somewhere.
All right. No, I thought you were speaking in jest.
His name is Gilles. No, I was not speaking in jest. His name is Gilles de Rais.
Oh, yes.
Easily the worst.
He was mentioned in that film. Forgotten the title.
I'm glad to see you do that.
Yes, forgotten the title. I was a collector of books, and the man who used to get books for me he bought one from that very man.
Skull, or the man who collected Poe?
That's right, yes, that's right, that was the one.
You knew Karloff.
Yes.
How did he feel about the Frankenstein pictures?
Well, I happened to be in his flat in London at the time that he was going to see the film for the first time after 25 years, and he was taking his wife to see it also. And he said to me that he was very pleased with the response that he had received from all over the world, as far away as from Australia. Particularly the young people of the world understood that he was a misunderstood creature. And James Whale, who had directed him in that, did a scene which never reached the screen, and Karloff felt was rightly so. You probably remember Little Maria, the flower that didn't float. There was this scene between them where she was offering him a petal, and that pleased him, that when he threw his flower in, finally he was all out of flowers, and he thought, well, flowers float, little girls must float. So he threw her into the water with the best intentions in the world, was quite surprised that she drowned. But he felt that gave a kind of a viciousness to the creature that he preferred.
Doesn't this tie in with the abomination that you just mentioned, though? Because that would have been the murder of a child on the screen.
There was in the book, of course, it's he's a very sad character, the monster, isn't he?
He's a sad character in the film, too.
Yes.
Well, I used to feel sorry. Didn't the monster cry in one picture? Don't I remember seeing a tear?
We Belong Dead in The Bride, when he had Elsa Lanchester, had been fashioned for him, and she reacted in such horror from him that broke the monster's heart, and a tear crept into his eye. And
marvelous.
It's interesting to compare the difference in our feelings when we watch the Frankenstein creature and then see a film that I saw just recently here. I think it's called The Brain of Jonathan Soames, in which the person, he's not a creature, he's just an ordinary person who was born asleep and stayed asleep for 30 years, and then some surgeon wakes him up, and then we see him. He repeats the Frankenstein story, but we don't have a sense of acute pity for him. And it's the ugliness of the creature that emphasizes his innocence. And I think that that's That innocence.
Sort of, the first time one felt that very strongly was The Hunchback of Notre Dame, wasn't it? The Charles Lawton one. And he got enormous sympathy for that, to Quasimodo.
Almost all of these monsters that we're going to be talking about have a special competence to raise in us the double feeling, first of fear and then of pity, which means that they come very close to Aristotle's definition of tragedy. And that's a curious...
All right, can we go down the monsters one by one and talk about their characteristics and what made them appealing and what made them believable? Because I suspect the secret of most good horror films is engendering in the audience the feeling it really could have happened.
Oh, yes.
But I have to stop for just a couple of minutes. We will continue after these announcements, and hang on to your seats. We'll be right back.